shall we jump in?
Yes.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. Hang on a second. I had something I was going to say at the beginning. I've totally forgotten what it was.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Hello and welcome to Netflix versus Cinema, the podcast that asks you that question. Netflix or cinema, where are you going to spend your money? Well, my name is Tosin. I am your host. I am based up in Coventry in the Midlands in England. And joining me as always on the Isle of Wight are Sharon.
Hello.
And Shaun.
Hello there.
Okay, cool. Well, that was a bit of a delay.
Oh yeah.
That was a bit of a delay before we go short. But okay, cool. I think we go short. We shall soldier on. We shall see what happens. Yes. So you might be wondering, Netflix versus cinema. You might be listening to this and you might realize we're still in lockdown. Cinemas have not quite made it back yet. And what are we doing on this show? So we usually go to the cinema, watch a couple of things, stay at home, watch a couple of things, and say, where has the money been better been spent this week? But during this time, in this lockdown, in our lockdown shows, what we're doing is we're talking about viewing habits in the lockdown. We're reviewing a couple of things we've seen at home. Then we're parachuting in a film buff. We're parachuting in somebody who just loves cinema, and we're asking them a couple of questions. This time, we go for the first time. I think this is the first time we have gone international with our film buff. With our film, but this is the first time we've gone to America to find a film buff. And so Jejuan Guillory shall be coming up later on. It's quite. I like a lot of stuff he had to say. But first of all, before we even get anywhere near that, let's go. Shaun, Sharon, how have you been doing? What have you been watching? How's it been going?
Well, I've seen a couple of things. I've watched a couple of things. I watched, because the football's been a little bit sporadic and I'm a little bit disheartened because I think barring a miracle, I'm resigned to going down. So I managed to catch a couple of things.
Shaun is a Bournemouth fan for anybody who's wondering what that's all about. Shaun's a Bournemouth lad and he's a fan of the football team Bournemouth and it's looking precarious for them.
Yeah. Well, my landlord, roommate, whatever you want to call him, he's got he got a Apple thing. Apple, I don't know, was it Apple Play?
Apple TV.
Apple TV.
Yeah.
Apple TV. Yeah. And so we watched Greyhound, Tom Hanks film.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Which
off the press for that.
I didn't realise this. Yes, and the other thing I watched was a horror anthology film from 2017 called XX or Double X. What I was intrigued by it because it said it was like an anthology of female directors. So,
all right,
yeah.
Okay, I get the XX now.
Yeah. I guess it's the like XYXX. Yeah.
So, all right, Sharon, how about you? What do you see?
I haven't seen anything.
Cool.
I like the way we sort of switch. This is why we have three of us, because one of us can go, I'm not bothering anything, and the other ones will pick up the slack. Last week, I think Sharon was the only one who'd actually finished something to its completion. And this week, we switched. Oh, what's the big deal? No big deal.
Yeah, I didn't intend not to watch anything, but it's one of those things. I sat down to watch a film as you do, and I probably spent more time scrolling through all the different menus looking for something to watch, and then by the time I'd been doing that for some time, I just thought, I'm running out of time now to watch this. So I think I gave up because a lot of them are like the new seasons have started on a lot of programs.
Yep.
Or getting sent these notifications from Netflix in particular saying we've just uploaded this film or this, and then you go to have a look and it's a series, so you think I don't want to spend 8 hours watching it. So I have to say I just watched a couple of episodes of the regular, and then I haven't seen anything else.
Well, I have to be honest with you that that does happen, especially now we start doing the podcast. There's sometimes when I'm like, oh yeah, and the week goes by so quickly that all of a sudden I'm like, oh, hang on, we're recording in like 2 days. I haven't seen anything. I haven't finished watching anything. And you go, oh, that's a series I want to watch. Oh no, I don't have time for 8 episodes. I need to find a film. And there you go. I don't want to watch that. Don't want to watch that. That looks rubbish. Forget it.
I look at something, I think they're good. I watch that, and then you realise it's like 43 episodes and it's dubbed in Russian, and you think, okay, maybe I need to give that a bit more time.
Yes. Yeah. So okay. So that's the case. Shaun, you've seen that. I finished watching The Five Bloods, which
good. Yeah, I was intrigued by this.
We'll come
to that.
We'll come to that later. If you've been listening over the last couple of weeks, The Five Bloods has become a little bit of a saga piece. But we'll come to that. And and there was a time I was seriously considering starting a blog called Late to the Party, which was about all these things that people would rave about, and I would never actually get around to watching it until everybody had stopped raving about it, and it was like 5 years past, and I'll watch it and I'll be like, oh yeah, okay, now I see what all the fuss is about. And I was thinking of doing that for Game of Thrones at one point, but eventually caught up with that. But I have finally, after all the raving, after everything that people have said about it, I have finally seen season 1 of Killing Eve.
Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah. So finally finished watching that. So Shaun, let's do a back and forth thing. So how about we kick off with your Apple TV Plus thing, because XX, was that also on Apple TV?
Yeah.
Okay, that was
on there as well.
Okay,
yeah.
so Shaun, you've gone into an Apple TV world for us this week.
I haven't. As I say, I haven't got it. It was just that he had it. So
yeah.
So a couple of nights I've actually, it's the first time we really sat down, and he said, "Do you want to watch a movie?" And I said, "Yeah, that'd be cool." Because so that was it really. And I thought, and I was thinking, I mean, originally, like you say, the week just goes by fast. But watch this double X thing, XX, and it was just like, oh, this is so cool, because I suddenly thought, I've got something for the podcast. I've got something for the podcast, and I thought, oh, that's a good idea. I better watch something else for the podcast. And I saw this Greyhound, and I just thought, I'd heard about it. I've read about it and all that sort of stuff. And I thought, oh, I wouldn't mind that, because with Tom Hanks, generally they're pretty good stuff, aren't they? Pretty good.
Yeah, they're pretty solid.
Movies,
yeah.
Really. Yeah. So yeah, and this being I like my war movies as well. So
yeah,
I think Sharon would enjoy this.
That could be a double-edged sword. A war movie with you, Shaun. It could either go really, really good or really, really bad, as we found out 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the Five Bloods, I didn't think was really a war movie, was it? But there you go. Anyway, This film Greyhound, it's based on a book which I didn't realise, called The Good Shepherd, which is basically, in the Second World War, you had the Atlantic convoys coming from America, and so what would happen is they would have air cover to cover themselves from submarines for a little while, but there would be, I forget what they called it. They actually called it something like the void. The void, might have called it the void or something like that, where the air cover, they couldn't get the air cover, so they had to keep going until they could get air cover from like England, before they could get. So you had this whole convoy, and it was protected by 4 destroyers. And the lead ship was obviously captained by Tom Hanks. It's called the Greyhound, and this is like his first mission, really. So, and I mean, there's a lot of action, and there's a lot of quite tense moments. And what's quite nice about it, I know this sounds, you're probably like this. What's quite nice about it is there's not a lot in the way of romance or anything like that. There's just a bit at the beginning where he sort of meets someone before he goes, and he says, "Oh, I'll be thinking of you around the corner all the time," and all that, and then it just gets in, and it's just pretty much action all the way through.
So you're saying that there's nobody sitting down there holding up, like, open up in a pocket watch and saying, "Oh yeah," showing it to other people, going, "That's my girl back home," and that's it. He's gonna die. He's dead.
That's it. There's not much of that. One thing I will say that I did find with this was it was a little bit samey. So I mean, although there was a lot of action going on with submarines and stuff, and things, and they're laying down the depth charges and all fire a pattern, and got like the submarine send out decoys and that. So he's made a bit of a mistake. So he's used up rather a lot of his ordnance. So, and you've got this thing with this U-boat commander saying, "Greyhound, we're gonna, you are not gonna survive the night," blah blah blah, all this sort of thing. So yeah, it's a lot of to-ing and throwing. There's a lot of so a real lot of action. And if you're into, I mean, I thought to start with, when I first saw it, I thought that, because obviously it's probably CGI, all the boats and things, I thought, I'm not sure if I'm gonna enjoy this because it might detract. But as I got into it, it wasn't so bad, and it was, it's like they've digitized like they did Peter Cushing in the
in Rogue One.
When they did that, after a while you sort of get used to it. When you see it, it's not quite as like, whoa, look at that, what's happened to him? It's like super. It's like, whoa, there you go. But no, it's a really, really, really good action film, and Tom Cruise is
Hanks.
I think Tom Hanks. Sorry, Tom Hanks. Sorry, excuse me. How can you confuse the two? But Tom Hanks, is he's this general. He's the stalwart, isn't he? Really, he's like regular actor that you just sort of holds a film, plays a good part. It's not like outstanding or anything like that. Do you know what he reminds me of, Sharon? He reminds me a bit of Kenneth Moore. I don't know why. Not his looks or anything like that.
No,
but
that's sort of reliable character actor.
Yeah, good old.
Well, he's become this sort of reliable character actor, hasn't he now?
Yeah, it's something.
Yes.
It's something I've got to be honest with you that I've gotten a bit worried about with Tom Hanks. I've gotten a bit worried that he's become reliable and possibly moving a little bit towards bland, towards a little, to possibly moving towards
he's going to be an upright, morally correct,
everyman. Oh yeah, this is the best thing about America, and therefore by extension humanity. It's like it's something I've gotten a bit worried about Tom Hanks, because I've seen some of the trailers for Greyhound, and I've sort of seen it like there's a bit where they go, Captain, what are we gonna do? And he goes, give him hell, and he sort of walks out. And the way he does it, I'm kind of like, that just seems like he seems too ground power for that role. Yeah. It's like you want someone. It's like you could imagine like if there was a Lee Marvin playing that kind of character or something like that, and he would growl that.
There's a bit of edge, yeah.
Yeah, there's a bit of edge, and to me, it just seemed like it's a bit samey. It's a bit Tom Hanksy.
Yeah.
But
I was thinking he's more of the Glenn. He's moved into the shoes of like a Glenn Ford type of actor, hasn't he? Where you know that they're solid, good, upright citizens.
Yeah.
I know it's about. I know it's about the Atlantic convoys with an American ship, but do you see any of the other ships, or was it just the Greyhound because that's the lead ship?
It was just. I mean, because the British ships actually take over, they've got to go. And although he's leading the convoy, he's in charge of the convoy. The other destroyers are British. So it's just like they've just. So the rest, because you never really see them till the end, but there's on the comment. I think one's called the Eagle, and the Eagle you need to cover the back of the convoy and blah blah blah. And then obviously there's, once they get a bit more, and it says, okay, well done, thank you very much. That's right. There's one bit where the submarine's destroyed, and the bloke to us says, the only thing that we need now is the captain's trousers or pants. He says, captain's pants. So. You need to get, for proof. Just a joke, like a jokey thing. So, so it is very much, it's very much, and when you get the distress flares and all that, it's very much like I guess you'd call it a mixed convoy. I guess the convoy itself is probably a mixture of American, those supply ships that come over. And I think there's some troop transports as well, because they get like big cheers and stuff. And
I know I say this with practically every single war film, but it's just because of the way the demographic of my family worked out. But one of my uncles was in the Merchant Navy because he was too young to join the Royal Navy. So he was signed up at 16 in 1939, and he was on the North Atlantic convoys, and he got torpedoed twice. But he survived the war, and he went there to become used to sail the ferries across the River Severn before they had a bridge. So I was interested in this because often with most theatres of war, I can say, I had an uncle in that, and so I've had an interest in this. So I had an uncle in the North Atlantic, so I've been interested. I've read a little bit about them just so I can say, this is what Uncle Jack went through. So
did you enjoy
to see a bit more?
So
did you enjoy The Cruel Sea? Because there's, in The Cruel Sea, the Jack Hawkins film, there is a piece which I thought. They've taken that straight out of The Cruel Sea, is where there's some sailors that are in the water, some from the merchant ship that's been sunk, and it's like, all the crew sort of looking at him to, what do we do? I won't tell you whether they saved them or whether they didn't, but they sort of, lot of other stuff going on.
Yeah.
I thought, that's
because I think there's
the
some of the
quote.
unsung heroes of that. Or there's some of the unsung. They get more recognition now, but for a long time, the Merchant Navy fleet didn't get much recognition at all, really.
All right, so Sean, how many stars?
I give it I'll be like, because good solid stalwart performance, I'll give it a 3-star. So it's quite watchable. It's not like outstanding. It's pretty much like Tom Hanks, really. Reliable, steady, but worth a watch. It's okay. For it's quite a short film as well. I think it's only like about an hour and a half. So
it's not too long. 91 minutes. So
those are the days.
Yeah.
You see, this is the thing. There's a bit of me that just thinks like, oh man, what I wouldn't give for, an amazing Tom Hanks performance in an amazing film. I don't think we've had that for ages. We've just had solid. No. So even before this film was released, I was like, this is going to be a 3 out of 5. But just in my head, I was thinking this is a 3 out of 5 all day. Although this is one of these films that has really been affected. Like the reason it's on Apple Plus is because of COVID. It was originally supposed to be released in cinemas, but because they kept putting it back and they didn't know when it was going to be released, then Apple sort of walked up and acquired it, and Apple have really promoted it as, oh look, an Apple original, when
with Tom Hanks.
Well, he wrote the screenplay as well. It was written by Tom Hanks as well, because he's like a well-known World War II buff. Like the two things that people know about him is that World War II buff. You look at the things he's done, from Band of Brothers to The Pacific to Saving Private Ryan, to like he's World War II buff and space buff. Like those are the two things that you know Tom Hanks from. And weirdly enough, typewriters.
How old is Tom Hanks?
Yeah,
how old is Tom Hanks? That'd be interesting. I don't know. I just wonder how old he is.
I would reckon 67. Let's see.
I was going to say I always put him in his 60s too, just purely because it's like me and Sharon, like war and space. Well, war and space and Western.
Yeah, that's what we grew up on.
I'm not. Yeah, exactly.
64.
64, right? Okay.
Yeah. Tom Hanks is.
There you go. See.
Yeah, Tom Hanks is 64.
I think that's it. I think like we're talking about generational things. It's like I've come to this round and round again. Is that it's what you sort of was your influences when you were young, what you watched, what you did,
when you were very young.
Relatives. Yeah, it's like all the relatives that probably are past now. They was all in the war, and it was still in memory, wasn't it? In like the 60s and 70s,
Oh yeah.
And all the glory comics like Victor, and which would be so probably politically incorrect these days. If you saw some of them, because
Commando. We got a lot of Commando in Nigeria.
Yeah. So like
the Commando comics,
Japanese always portrayed the same, aren't they?
Yes.
Japanese.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean. So, anyway,
let's move on. Let's move on.
Okay, yeah. Sorry about that.
Let's move on. Let's just move on. Anyway, and also because of time. Right, so on to me. I have seen Killing Eve season 1. Now, Killing Eve, you might have heard about this. It was raved about a couple of years ago when the first season came out. And when it was raved about, everybody was talking about, oh my God, this is amazing, this is great. It was written by Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who was known for Fleabag at that time, award-winning, and it went and swept all the awards, starring Sandra Oh and Jodie Comer. And it's all about the battle of wills or pretty much, it's kind of like, if there was anything I could compare it to, a little bit like Heat with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. And you have this whole sort of battle of wills where one of them is being chased, one of them is trying to be caught. And it is between Sandra Oh, who is like this sort of MI5 analyst in London, based in London. So doesn't really do anything, doesn't know how to shoot a gun, but sits in an office and just sort of like analyzes like what's going on across. And Jodie Comer plays a character called Villanelle. And she is a Russian assassin. And there's all these killings that have happened, high profile killings that have happened across Europe. And they're like, what is going on? Who is doing all this? And there seems to be no pattern. But she figures out that she's like, I think that there's a woman assassin that we do not know about that is going around doing all these things. And she gets drawn into it. And I think one of the things about Killing Eve, a lot of stuff has been said about it and all that, but I think it's a show that knows very much what kind of genre it's in, which is, the spy movie genre. Like, you look at it and you immediately go, oh yeah, it's going to be like a Heat thing. It's going to be a good guy, bad guy chasing each other, and they're kind of like mirrors of each other, and blah, 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 blah. But it is, I think almost every character, it's knows what genre it is, and it decides to just sort of like subvert almost everything about that genre. So it has the basic thing of you have one person chasing the other person, but then every character in this show zigs when you expect them to zag. It's kind of like it knows, yes, we've set it up, we know that this is what you'll be expecting now, and no, we're going to do that instead. And it becomes this really, really weird thing where from one of the first times you meet, because the Eve of the title is the Sandra Oh character. So when they say killing Eve, Eve is actually the MI5 agent who is trying to track down this Russian assassin. And there's one of these things where they show one of the kills of like the assassin, and they say, kill this person in broad daylight in the street. He didn't even realize that he'd been attacked until he'd already walked in like another 10 meters, and then he dropped down bleeding. And everybody is like, oh my, and it was one of these things where you have two characters, and one of them goes, oh my God, that's terrible. And she goes, oh, that's so cool. At the same time. And it turns out that she has like files, and she has folders where she has just been looking at like, assassins. And they ask her why does she look at it? She's like, I just find them interesting. So from the word go that that Eve is not your typical law enforcement officer, that there's something a bit unique about her. And then it becomes this whole thing where she becomes fascinated with Villanelle, and then Villanelle becomes fascinated with her. And you're watching it, and there's 8 episodes, and all the way through you're watching it going, I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen. Okay. You have these bits where you have a confrontation, and it's no, that will be a bit of a spoiler. I'm not going to say that. So, but you have all these things happen, and it's 8 episodes, and you know how sometimes you feel a season of a TV show finishes, and you can feel them setting up season 2. You can feel them setting up season 2, and you can feel like they're just trying to keep you interested long enough to come back next so they can sell you more stuff, pretty much. But with Killing Eve, when the first season finishes, it really does feel like the first chapter of a book. And it feels like it ends in a quite organic place, and it leaves you going, okay, I actually want to know what happens next. And sure enough, I'm coming to this late to the party, as I said. There's already been 3 seasons. Season 1 finished, and when it goes on to the next episode, it was about to start playing the next episode. And I was like, okay, oh, the next episode is season 2, episode 1. Oh, that's interesting. The way they just, I was like, that really, really just did feel like the first chapter of a book, and you want to see where else it goes. So I'm happy to report that the hype around Killing Eve was justified. A lot of it is because you have 2 women being the leads in this thing, and you don't really get to see that. And it does have, I'm not gonna say like, it brings a female aspect to it, because to be honest, I don't know what that is. But I'll say that it's definitely a different voice. It's definitely a different voice that you have. Like all the characters that you have. Okay, that's supposed to be a damsel in distress. That doesn't happen. That's supposed to be a screamy kid that's scared about getting killed. That doesn't happen. Pretty much, as I said, every single character in this thing does something different to what you've grown accustomed to seeing in things about spies and assassins and all that. Loved the first season. Would give it a 4 out of 5. And I would recommend everybody else go see it. And I can't say much more also, because after that I'll just start spoiling all over the place. I'll just start spoiling all over the place. And even though it's been out for about, I think it must be 4 years now, I would still say that...
Yeah, they're on to season 3, aren't they? So it's,
They finished season 3. They finished season 3 now. So it's, I would say, yeah, go check it out, because it will bring in, and I think, Sharon, you will like it.
Okay.
I think you will like it. The characters are crazy. So okay.
Well,
so
even my mum watched it. Even my mum watched it, so it must be good, I think.
Oh,
to watch it.
Did she give you a review?
No, she didn't really give a review. She just said, this is a good series. I've taped it for you to watch and all that. And I was going, oh, thanks, mum. But loads of other things. She tapes all these. We're on Virgin, and she's got one of those TiVo
boxes,
or whatever.
Yeah.
And she just records it. She says, I've recorded this thing that I thought you might like. And I'm like, oh, right, okay. And it's just like loads of things for when I go over, which is really nice. But it's, some of the things are. But Killing Eve, a load of people have said it's good, so it might be worth it.
Yeah, it's on BBC iPlayer. It's on BBC iPlayer, so I think it's definitely worth a look. Definitely worth a look. It's one of those things that sucks you in, and like 3 episodes in, you're like, ooh, Ooh, wasn't expecting that. Yeah. But anyway, let's move on. We've just spoken about something that was written by a woman, starring two women, and has been seen, people seen as like, some sort of almost feminist icons, because I think Villanelle, even though she is a ruthless killer, she has become a bit of a feminist icon. Because
I know her clothes. Her outfits are quite discussed, aren't they? People do have whole YouTube videos about Villanelle's clothes.
Her outfits are quite out there, and clothes play a part in her thing. There's whole sequences that are focused on clothes, and I'll stop there. So let's go to something else that's female focused. More of this. We should need to see more of this as it's coming along. So XX, Shaun, you saw this. This was on Apple Plus
XX.
as well, and you said it was the anthology of horror stories done by women.
Yeah, but by female directors. Yeah, so there's all female directors. Yeah, so it's basically this story. There's like 4 stories. The first one's this weird thing, the box where this starts on a bus, and there's like a man with a box like that. Is weird looking man, and
is it a bit like you know how they have the Twilight Zone movie, and in the Twilight Zone movie
it's very similar to that. So basically he looks in the box, and then something happens. I won't go into too much because I don't want to bore you too much. But so he looks on the bus and he goes, yes, of course you can look. And his mum says, don't be so rude. And he looks in, and then after that he doesn't eat. He's like starved himself and all that. And he's got a sister, and they're all saying things. And then the mum comes in, and she's talking to the sister on the bed, and then she stops eating. Anyway, so that's the first one. I won't tell you much more than that. Yeah. So
because with horror movies, you really don't want to know what happens.
What the trigger is.
You don't even know what it was. And the second one sort of the second one's like a birthday party thing that goes all a bit odd, So and then there was this other one called what was it called? Anyway, it's one like where
Don't Fall.
Like
there's Don't Fall.
Don't Fall, and that's like a scary monstery sort of like chasey monster, girly, screamy sort of thing,
the final girl type story.
Yeah. So being monstery type thing with like there's something there, blah blah blah, all that sort of thing. Then I didn't.
They should keep falling over.
Well, you could say something on that. And then there's one which is about like a bit of an occult thing. It's like this mother's been shielding her son from, well, I won't say who from, but anyway. So basically it's 4 different stories directed by women, and I have to say, I sound like a misogynist if I say any of them weren't particularly very good. I didn't think, from a personal point. But then, with me and my horror stuff, so probably.
Well, the thing is, I think, quite frankly, if you're reviewing this, we just need to forget about the fact that they're directed by women and say what you actually thought about the films themselves.
Okay. So I didn't really. I mean, the first story was like, because it sort of went. What going? And it was really, really odd. I will say there was probably none of the stories were particularly horrifying. None of the stories were particularly chilling or thrilling, and a lot of the stories finished like, what was that? And there's no way you could think, God, that finishes. But I will say the transitions between the sections, they had this totally weird animation, which was like a house, that like a living house with a doll, like Alice in Wonderland, which is in the house, but it was all like, have you ever seen that film 9 with the little creatures, the little creatures,
the sort of stop motion animation
like
film,
that, and all these weird bugs and like things happening and stuff like that. So the actual transitions between the stories were, I thought, wow, that's really, really clever, really, really good. But as for the there wasn't, I wouldn't know what order to put the stories in. I'm trying to think of one that perhaps sticks in my head. Maybe. Okay, so, no, I don't know. No.
So
I can't really say.
The thing with you, Shaun, is that we know that you have quite a high bar when it comes to horror movies. You have you're pretty much the kind of person who the horror movie starts and you sat down there going, so go ahead, scare me, impress me, do something. You say that you haven't seen a film that has properly scared you in probably the last 15 years or something like that. So with that, I always feel like when you talk about a horror movie, I feel like it would have to be something totally different. It would have to be something like, it's
something special. I was hoping for something here, but it just didn't really. To me, none of the segments were any good or intriguing. I thought, some of them were even like, oh yeah, seen all that before. There's nothing new at all there. Especially the chasey werewolfy type one. There's so I can't really recommend this for people. I can't really give this a huge amount. So I mean, I don't know. This is a tough call. I'd probably give it, probably a 2. It could be between, but I'm probably going to give this a 2, maybe 2.5, and because I did like the transitions.
All right, cool. Yeah, that's no problem. I think it's but to be honest with you, when I hear horror movies now, I feel like horror movies have become just very, very formulaic, and it's about
definitely very, very cliche. You get all the same cliches and things.
Yeah. So you have your, and even what you were saying there is like there's certain tropes or there's certain genres within horror movies. Like you have your slasher movie, and you have your monster chase movie, and you have your atmospheric whatever movie like the Babadook, and they're these tropes.
And your demony. Yeah, and your demony one, So I guess you've got all the tropes there like that. You've got a chasey, scarer, shocker. You've got an intriguing one. You've got your, evil one, or demon.
So the thing with me is that I always feel like it's when it comes to horror movies especially, I feel like horror movies don't have anything. Well, when it comes to horror movies, I am never expecting them to be good. I'm expecting them to be. I'm expecting them to be. It's a bit like the Tom Hanks thing. I'm expecting them to be okay, solid examples of the genre. And it's the same way that when I think about more black people getting a chance to actually make films, I'm like, well, black people need to get the chance to make mediocre films as well, the same way white people get a chance to make mediocre films all over the shop. So even if it's the fact that a black person is getting a chance to make a mediocre film, I'm like, yeah, that's progress. So with this, even if it's women who are getting chances to make mediocre films, that is progress, because beforehand they weren't even getting the chance. So I know everything can be great. So 2 out of 5 out of that. And now before we get onto our interview with Jejuan Guillory. And now we come to the bone of contention. Shaun and I are going to be like two rotten balls. Every now and then a film comes out that puts us as loggerheads with each other.
Sharon, you'll have to mediate. You'll have to mediate.
Yes. Every day, we had a little bit of a mini one over the Invisible Man. We had I know that there were films like this where we just don't agree, and I have to admit, after hearing what Shaun said, and now I have finished watching The Five Bloods. I said last week that I'd seen about an hour of it, and so far I was really liking it. I didn't understand what Shaun was saying, and it would have to go downhill a lot for me to get to the same place that Shaun was by the time the film finished. And it didn't happen, Shaun. It didn't happen. I got to the end of it, and I agree.
I didn't think it would.
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of the stuff you say. One of the things about it is that it's a film. It's probably about 3 different films in one. There's sort of like
all over the place, chaotic.
There's kind of like there's a heist film in there. There is a bit of a war film in there. There is an old men reflecting on their lives film in there. There is a 4 friends go into the jungle by themselves. What happened? So a bit Deliverance-y. there's a little bit of that in there. So it's kind of like whenever you see a film and you have like these 4 men, they go into the jungle by themselves, and you just go, not all of them are coming out. that kind of thing. And so,
can I ask you one thing?
Yes,
Rose? Just one thing. What was that? Perhaps I missed something because I want to. But they, when it comes to that burial in the jungle, I mean, you know, that's like, well, you've gone over there for a certain over there to try and find someone. Why are you going to leave someone?
Yes, and you see that was.
You see, it's just like
that is, and there are some bits like that, like the fact that the whole idea is that they're going to Vietnam. These are 4 black Vietnam veterans. They're going back to Vietnam, and they're going back there because they say they want to bring back the body of the leader who was out there, because these were guys who they felt like they were out of place. They were black people fighting in a war in another country, and there's a real thing that's done about how you have oppressed people who are being oppressed by America going over to go fight and kill other people who are being oppressed by America. And there's a whole bit of that in there, and then they go in there, and then it's like, oh, we've got to take his body back. And one of them makes a big deal of the fact that we've got to. They also want to go find some gold that they left there, but one of them makes a big deal of the fact that no, we want to go get. I am not leaving without that guy. I'm not leaving without that guy. We've got to go find his body. I know we found the gold, but we've got to go find that guy. And he makes a big deal about that. As I said, when you have a story that starts off with 4 lifelong friends going to a jungle, you know, none of them are coming back out. So some of them, as you know, none of them are coming back out. There's a bit where I know what Sean say, because they go back to go pick somebody up, but then somebody else dies there, and then they bury that person there. And that bit, I would agree with. I would agree with that. But the thing is, it's with Spike Lee. We're going to run out of some time in a second. This will continue after the break. But with Spike Lee, the thing about him is, one of the things that he does in this film is that he never pretends like this film is anything other than a lesson or polemic, or like he's trying to give you a lecture. He never pretends that this film is anything other than that. But
Black Klansman was so good. Black Klansman. Klansman was class. It's a lovely film. But this.
Okay. Sean, this is my turn. All right, you've had your rant.
Oh, it's right. Yeah.
You've had your. So the thing is, okay, you say that, right? Okay, I know you love Black Klansman. I don't think I love Black Klansman as much as you do. And with this one, I think just for the eye-opening thing about soldiers in Vietnam, and for that whole juxtaposition of because the film starts off and there's a bit where you have Muhammad Ali giving a quote saying, "Why should I go over to Vietnam?" When he was avoiding the draft, he was like, "Why should I go over to Vietnam and kill people who've done nothing for me? This is like, an American war. This is like, a white person's war. They're going over there to oppress other people. I've been oppressed." And I love the Hanoi Hannah bits where you have like a lady who was on the radio and was speaking directly to black soldiers, saying, this is what your government is doing in America. Today, this person got killed in this place. Today, that thing happened. Today, this neighborhood got burned down just because they were black. Why are you fighting for this country? And I love those bits. And there are loads of different films in there. So, as I was saying, it's like someone has given Spike Lee a chance to make a war movie. And he's gone like, you know what? I'm Spike Lee. I'm not going to lose this chance. I can't just make a straight up movie. And I agree with you, Sean. Like, if you try and look at this film as a narrative piece of work, as in inciting incident, second act, third act, end, then you will get really annoyed with it. But if you see this film a bit more like a performance piece, so it's a bit more like, when you go into a place and you have like, you go to a stage show and you have this performance piece where somebody's putting on all this stuff. And there's bits where almost as if this film is asking you to be aware of the fact that it is a film. That this is something that somebody has put together and he's trying to tell you something. And
you're not convincing me. You're not convincing me, Tosin, at all.
The thing is, I do not expect to convince you, Sean. I do not expect to convince you at all. That is my job here is not to convince you. It's my job is like this. I saw this film. This is what I thought. And there is some of, because obviously this film has been labeled like, sort of like a Black Lives Matter thing and all that sort of stuff. And Martin Lawrence, and this is a bit of a jump, going from Spike Lee to Martin Lawrence. I remember when I first came to the UK, and Martin Lawrence films, we would watch them in Nigeria and we would love them. Mostly because we saw a black man on screen. It didn't matter, we didn't really look at what the quality of the film was like. And I remember getting over to the UK and, as I said, started reading like, film publications and film reviews and all that. and they would lambast Martin Lawrence films and talk about them like they were the worst thing ever. Like they were just pieces of, like they were pieces of insults to the celluloid on which they were printed. I used to sit down, I used to go, whoa, what is the big deal? Why you don't get? And then I started putting it, I was like, I think that there is something cultural in here. There's something cultural in here where there is something going on that you might not have access to. And I know that definitely happens with me with some things that everybody seems to love and I just don't get, like the UK Office or Ricky Gervais in general. And and I think that in here there might be something like that. It's a bit like how I said when I went to watch Get Out in the cinema, and I know, and I feel this is a bit unfair to take it in this direction, because once especially in the current climate, the second I say, well, I think it might be a black thing, then it's kind of like, bad form to say anything against that. But there were things where I was looking at it, right? I was looking at this thing and saying, this is not a normal film, because there's things in this film that are so blatantly done. Like, when they talk about Chekhov's gun, that if there's a gun in the first act, it's going to have to go off by the end of the third. There's characters that they bring into the film, and the second they bring the characters into the film, the character says one line, you're like, okay, I know what's going to happen later on. Like there's a certain character who is the French woman, Shaun. The second
I know the French woman. Yeah.
The second she shows up and she starts talking, you're like, I know exactly what's going to happen when they go into the jungle. That's going to happen. And there's even a bit where it gets to a point where I know you mentioned Delroy Lindo's performance and how you said you didn't like it because it was too Fred Williamson. It was too kind of like, it wasn't
a parody. It was a parody. I think a parody.
You think it is because you said it wasn't realistic. Now, the funny thing about this is, I have been on the streets in London and I've seen black people walking along who obviously have some mental issues. I've seen it in Nigeria, I've seen it in America, and he had elements of those.
Tosin, I'm a well-travelled person and I've seen elements of that as well everywhere I've been, quite a lot. So, I'm the same, and I've seen people where they're going along talking themselves and all that. But that was just a total over-the-top parody of Fred Williamson from Dusk Till Dawn.
And on that, I have to disagree with you. That I'll have to disagree with you. But
I'm a Green Beret.
And there's the bit where, and he's the character who it's kind of, he's weird. He's a weird character because he's kind of like internalized all. So everything that he says that comes out, he's essentially, this is a black man who was in the Vietnam War. There's a point in Vietnam War where Martin Luther King gets shot, and he is the one who's saying, we need to go kill some white people. We need to go kill some white people right now. But then you go years later, and he's walking around with a Make America Great Again hat. He wears a Make America Great Again hat for most of the film. And he is the one who says the most racist things in the film. He's the one who talks about, like, the way he speaks about Vietnamese people and all that sort of stuff. And what he says about, we need to build that wall and we need to get those Mexicans out of our country. He's a confused character. He's the one that he shows up with messed up in the head. He might as well be wearing a t-shirt saying messed up in the head. And there's a bit towards the end of the film where it goes, essentially, it just totally breaks the fourth wall. He is talking directly to the camera. And it could as well be a letter to Donald Trump. It might as well be a letter to Donald Trump where he's speaking directly down the barrel of the camera, talking to it, and he ends up with a Black Power salute with his hand in it. And so essentially, I don't think it is a normal narrative film. I think it is a piece of performance art. And I think like most pieces of performance art, whether it's Damien Hirst covering a skull in diamonds or whether it's Tracy Emin not leaving her bed for 3 months, it will rub people up the wrong way. Some people will like it, some people will find something true in it, and some people will think it's a piece of rubbish. And I think that's what Spike Lee has done here. I liked it, and I personally, and I would say this personally because I know you gave it a 1, I personally would give it a 4. So... but this is the great thing about it's all about opinions. It's about film opinions. You do not have to agree. You do not have to force anybody else to see things from your point of view. You can have your own opinion and you can say, you know what, I didn't like that, and I can look at it and go, I did. So
Was it? I know it's a film that's on Netflix. Was it a film that was made for Netflix, or where I don't know how much license a filmmaker gets when they make films for a network, rather than if they make it for cinematic release? Was it intended for a cinematic release?
No, I think this was always made for Netflix. I think it was
right.
made for Netflix, so, and Netflix they have this whole thing where Netflix don't care if a film is good or bad, so they don't try and control what the final film is going to be like. What Netflix want to do is that they want to get people to watch it. They want to get something that has interest, because people have interest, and even if they sign up just because of the interest that this thing generates. So if they say Martin Scorsese is making a film, doesn't matter whether it's good or bad, people are going to watch that film.
If it's 3 hours long, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. People are going to watch that film.
If it's something where, if it's like a format where a filmmaker has license, then you are going to get these things where it becomes more of a passion project rather than a commercial project. Then you say, okay, this is what my passion is, so this is where I'm going to take this film, rather than thinking, okay, if I'm making this as a commercial film that I need to sell at cinemas, then I need to be a bit more tight about the narrative. So maybe sort of get the balance between the two. You can understand how, being the format it's in, it gives scope for a filmmaker to just maybe be a bit more personal about the choices he makes in the films he's made. Yeah,
and
a film like this, and choices that you make, because you said, I think you referenced Shaun when you saw it, that some of the actors they're the same actor who plays the mature man, and you see them in a scene as mature men, but they're surrounded by younger men.
Yeah, essentially.
So I haven't seen the film, so that would tell me that they're saying, we're taking we're still in this place. This is a place that was influential to me, and this had a big impact on me. And I'm still here in many ways. And I'm surrounded by the ghosts of the past, that they haven't grown up, but obviously I have.
I
can see there's interesting things to say in there.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the when I say that he doesn't make any bones about trying to show you the fact that he is telling you something. He's not trying to make a straightforward narrative. It's a bit like you ever heard of Bertolt Brecht, the playwright?
Baal, yes, I know. I've been to see the couple of stage shows of him. Yeah, Baal. David. There was I saw about 3 productions of Baal because I really like it.
Yeah,
and
with Brecht, it was this whole thing where he had this whole thing of, he wanted you to know you were watching a play. He did not want you to get immersed. Whatever he did, he wanted you to know you are watching a play right now. This is not real. This is fake. And I've heard the term Brechtian used about this film, and I still don't entirely know what it means. But there's that whole thing about somebody has made something, and they want you to know that they have made something. They're not trying to get you to. They're not trying to get you to escape into it or anything like that. But anyway. Let's leave that because I know that this is something that Shaun and I will never agree on.
Never agree.
Just wait till I review it.
Yes, I've got to wait.
You'll love it. You'll probably. Yeah, go on. I can't wait for you to see it. You must see it, Sharon. You must see it.
To be honest with you, I don't know that if it's something that I will watch, because to be honest with you, I'm not that interested in films about the American involvement in Vietnam, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think it's probably more complex than I've actually comprehended. So I don't know much about the history of the region. I don't know much about the history of what led to that conflict. And I know the consequences are they echo through time, don't they, since that conflict. So it's not a period of time that I'm particularly interested in. So I thought, I don't want to go into it and just go, are you going to entertain me, when I don't know if it's necessarily a film about entertainment, when it's some of the history and the period and
it's definitely not about entertaining. This film is not concerned with entertaining you whatsoever. So
I don't know that if I would go into it, if I would be going into it thinking, I don't know if it would appeal to me on that basis, that it's not a period, the subject that interests me particularly, and would the content be enough to hold my interest? And so I've said, I don't want to just go in it and say, I watch it just to. You'll be
bored. You'll be bored after the first hour, mate.
Okay. I, on the other hand, do not think you will be. I do not think you will be. So it's all right now. Now let us go to our interview. Let's go on to happier things and things that will not have Shaun and I at loggerheads. I'm actually kind of glad we're doing this remotely, because this might get personal. But
It might do. I hope not. It shouldn't do. You're exactly right. It shouldn't do. But I think it's just that, I don't know. Yeah, no, you're exactly right, Toes. You're right. It shouldn't get personal, but it feels personal. I don't know why.
Yeah. I know.
Well, if there's something that you feel strongly about, you can understand how people do. I mean, there are films I absolutely detested that I know that other people have liked.
Yeah. That
I'm looking at their images now, and I have utterly detested some films, and so I wouldn't give them. Yeah. So we know these films do exist, don't we?
These films do exist, and this is definitely going to be one of those. Anyway, so we're going to move on to our interview with Jejuan Guillory. Now, this is, as I said, this is the first time we have gone international with our film buff interview, and this is Jejuan, who is someone who I met in 2005 when we were both in LA, and we were both at something called the School of Campus Ministry, training to be campus ministers for a church. Now, in the years past, this interview has been cut down from a much longer one. So Jejuan and I were on the phone for an hour and a half.
Wow.
Yeah, we were on the phone for an hour and a half. Part of it was kind of like, we didn't really do much catching up. It was just talking about films and talking about what's happened in the last 15 years and what we've watched and all that stuff. So this is the bit where I've tried to just find the bits where we ask the 4 questions that we usually ask in the interviews, which is, what was the first thing you ever saw at the cinema? What was the last film you saw before the lockdown hit? What are the other questions we ask? Why do you think
What's the last film you saw? What's the first film you saw?
Yeah. Well, why is cinema such a big deal? And the final thing is, what are you most looking forward to seeing when the cinemas reopen? And Jejuan went off on a whole thing, and the things that I've cut out of this interview are a lot. Number one, I cut out the bit where he talked about how he went to the Oscars. So he randomly dropped into the he's like, yeah, I've been to the Oscars a couple of times, and he was telling me the story of what actually happens at the Oscars and what goes on backstage. He was like, I was at the Oscars the year that Alec Baldwin and Steve Martin hosted it. I was at the Oscars the year all this, but I'll tell you afterwards all the things that we cut out, which we shall put into its own special interview thing, because excellent. I think he works in TV in America, he's worked in film in America, and he has interesting insights. But anyway, here is Jejuan, and here, enjoy. So congratulations, Mr. Guillory. You are our film buff for this week.
I'm honored. I'm honored to be the film buff. I don't know if I would call myself a film buff. I am a film fan. I'm a movie fan. I love going to the movies, always have. And I'm obsessed with movies. That's what I do in my free time, is watch stuff. Watch movies, watch television, watch streaming content. I love it.
Yeah, and even just before we actually came on, you were reminding me about the fact that we both went to see we went to see Star Wars: Revenge of the Sith together, and I gave probably one of the hastiest reviews I've ever given in my life of when I watched that film, because I remember we went.
I'll never forget it.
I remember we went to see that in LA together, didn't we?
Oh. Gosh, I'll never forget it. I think about it often. Actually, every time, because I this is 100% true. I have Disney Plus, and every once in a while, I'll say, what do I want to watch some Star Wars, something Star Wars? Which now I think the Clone Wars cartoon is probably the best option. But I decide, like every once in a while, let me go ahead and watch. I called it a cartoon, the animated series, but let me go ahead and watch something from the prequels. And every time I see Revenge of the Sith, I'm like, man, I remember seeing that in the theater, and Tosin came up and he was like, what do you think? And I paused because I had mixed feelings, and you just right away said, I think he nailed it.
Now, the truth is, you were being kind to me, because I would go as far as, I remember the conversation continued, and I said, I think that might be the best one so far. I think I was a bit heady because I remember being really, really nonplussed by by the Attack of the Clones. I remember watching that and just feeling nothing after watching that film. And the fact that they came up with a film that at least made me feel something, I think I was just sort of like, I was high on relief or something at that time. Although I have said this because I've had conversations about that film, and it happened a while back, when I was relating the story of what happens in Revenge of the Sith to somebody else. And as I was relating the story, I was like, hang on a second. These are the bones of a great story. Why doesn't it work? Why doesn't it work?
So much is in the execution, right?
Yeah.
It's like you and I could be telling the same story, and one of us tells that same story so much better.
Yeah.
And but I think also there's a lot of politics, and there's the Senate meetings, and there's just a lot of lull in the Revenge of the Sith before you really kind of get down to brass tacks. And I think, as a Star Wars fan, the excitement with the prequels was like, I get to see Anakin Skywalker be Anakin Skywalker, right? And I get to see Darth Vader, and you're thinking you're going to see him at his best, right? And you don't really get that in the prequels. You get it in the Clone Wars animated series.
Yeah.
I think they do such a great job with the relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin Skywalker, and you do get to spend a lot of time with Anakin Skywalker kind of at his peak as a Jedi, right?
Yeah.
And as a military leader. But that's completely missing from the prequel movies, the live action movies, where you kind of just get people like referring to him being great in those ways, or kind of referring to him being emotional or impetuous or something.
It's the whole show don't tell, and they just told you. And
Yeah, they just kind of told you, and you see these like little flash moments of like action. But I think to your defense, the Revenge of the Sith movie gives you the best Anakin action.
Yes.
With the lightsaber duel between him and Obi-Wan. Out of all the prequels, that actually kind of gives you Anakin Skywalker fighting in that lightsaber duel looking pretty awesome for the first 30 seconds. And then it kind of deteriorates in my opinion. But I
agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
That first part
I remember
epic.
even in my sort of relief fueled euphoria after watching that film, I do remember thinking that final fight was a bit of a letdown, because I've only ever seen the film through once, and that was the time I watched it with you. Then after that, I went and watched the original. I went, oh no, these are better. But I have to think is it Order 66 or Order 99? That whole sequence that they execute in the Revenge of the Sith, I still think that's a very, very good sequence. It
is a good sequence.
I think that's
pretty good sequence.
I think that's a really, really well executed sequence. But it does seem that nowadays Star Wars is best out of the hands of George Lucas, unfortunately, and J.J. Abrams. But anyway.
Gosh almighty, man. I could spend 2 hours just going in on Star Wars, but
honestly,
I shall let it be.
Honestly, I've banned myself from talking about this, about episode 9 on the podcast, because we've had a couple of interviews where somebody has mentioned, one of the questions we will be asking is what the last film you saw in cinema before COVID hit was.
My gosh.
And some people have said episode 9, and I've ended up going off on one. I've ended up so I've pretty much banned myself. I'm like, okay, cool. I am not allowed to talk about episode 9. I'm not allowed to talk about Batman versus Superman, and I'm not allowed to talk about Artemis Fowl.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Because it would be an hour of me ranting.
That's how I feel. I feel like the Star Wars conversation is a trap, because I would spend 2 hours ranting, and probably still wouldn't be done.
Yeah. Just no, you cannot get to the bottom of that thing. I think my thing now is they should have stopped they should have stopped in 1983. They should have just stopped and said, forget about it, no more films. So now the questions that we have that we ask people, because of course it's a bit of a celebration of cinema. It's like kind of like, obviously Netflix is cinema. We call it the cinematic boxing match. Cinema's out for the count. It's down on the. But we're going to talk about why we love it, and we're going to celebrate it until it comes back. That's right. That's the whole idea about it. So to do that, we're asking people, and the first question we ask them is, what was the first film you ever saw in a cinema?
The first film I ever saw in a cinema was Return of the Jedi.
Oh my God. We can't escape it.
That was the first film I ever saw. And I'm telling you, I remember it. It's my earliest memory. I was maybe like 1 year old.
Really?
I remember it. Yeah.
Because I was thinking hang on, Return of the Jedi. If we saw that in the cinema, that was like 1983, and let's see, I was 3.
Yeah.
So I don't remember anything from when I was 3.
I must have been maybe 2. Maybe I was 2 years old, but I remember it. I remember being there, and I remember so many movies, going to the movies, to see so many movies as a kid. I saw Dune in the theater as like a young kid, but my parents took me out. I was with my aunt, and that's who I used to go see a lot of movies with. I used to go with my aunt, and we started watching Dune, which I think in her mind was going to be very close to Star Wars, and it wasn't. And it was a little, like, I think in her mind, a little too like graphic and violent. So then I remember her walking me out of the theater. So we didn't finish watching Dune, but Star Wars, Return of the Jedi was my first movie.
Oh wow! And so okay, you watch Return of the Jedi around about when you're 2 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And was that the moment where you thought, this is amazing, I want to do it again, or did that come later in life?
I don't know if I had this like as sophisticated of a thought as like, oh, this is amazing, I want to be a part of this, at 2 years old.
Yeah.
But I just remembered like the amazement. Like I was just so amazed, which I'm gonna tie it back to another story, because my son, I can't remember how old he was. When did Force Awakens come out?
Force Awakens, oh, good Lord. That must have been like 2015 or something.
Okay, so 2015. So he was probably like 4 years old.
Yeah.
And I took him to go see The Force Awakens. And he didn't say anything the entire movie. He wasn't a big Star Wars fan. This was more about me going to see it again. And the movie ends, and he just looks up to me, and he goes, "That was awesome." He was silent the entire time. He just looks up and goes, "That was awesome." And I felt like that really echoed my feeling, or mirrored my feeling, when I was probably like 2 years old.
Yeah.
And I had seen Return of the Jedi. I just remember it being just awesome. And I remember Ewoks and green lightsabers and lasers, and so much so that I remember my next thought about Star Wars was being at my aunt's boyfriend's apartment, and he put on VHS, I think it was The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
And I saw Luke, turn on his lightsaber, and it was blue. And I told him, I remember saying to them, I was like, "Oh, the color on your television is wrong." And they were like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, the color on your TV is wrong, because his lightsaber that's the wrong color. His lightsaber is green, and it's showing up as blue on your television. And they tried to fiddle with it. I mean, they couldn't understand why I was so bothered by it. But it was because I had seen Return of the Jedi first. That was my baptism in Star Wars. I took that as, truth, absolute truth. And then when we saw Return of the Jedi, I was completely thrown off. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Awesome.
When we saw Empire Strikes Back, I was completely thrown off. Yeah.
Oh, good Lord, that is awesome. I love that. I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, cool. So with that'd be the first film that you saw. Do you remember what happened when you actually got to the point where you could actually get more choice over what you went to see in cinemas?
Ooh, I took the recommendation of my aunt most of the time. I sometimes remember, I have a couple of stories about going to movies with her, because it's so much of what I remember being a kid. But I remember not picking a certain movie and saying, "Hey, I want to go see this." Maybe Rocky V. I specifically remember saying, like, "I want to go see this, Rocky V," and she took me. But I remember wanting to just go to the movies.
Yeah.
And she took me to go see Home Alone. We just picked it. I remember, because back then you had a newspaper. You'd have to look and see, you look for the movie times in the newspaper. And we saw, like, and she was like, "Okay, this must be a kid's movie or whatever." She maybe had read something, and she was like, "Okay, let's go see it." But we went into it with no expectations. It wasn't like we had seen the trailers for Home Alone and we were dying to go see that movie. We just went to go see Home Alone because it was what was available.
Yeah.
And we left in pain, because we had been laughing so hard, and we loved that movie. I don't know if it holds up, but at the time, back in, whenever that was, 19, I don't even remember when Home Alone came out, but
late 80s, yeah.
Late 80s, yeah. I mean, it was hilarious. And then our current president had a cameo. Oh, that was Home Alone 2.
That was Home Alone 2,
he had a cameo,
in it.
He had a cameo. But no, the first one was just hilarious. It was just a surprise hit for us. So I remember that one. I remember asking to go see Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Oh yeah.
I asked my other aunt. I had two to go take me. She took me. She fell asleep in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. But I remember that movie. Yeah, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And then I remember going to see Ghostbusters.
Ooh.
In the theater with my aunt, and I remember that vividly and really loving that experience as well. Yeah, and that's a movie over time I grew to appreciate more and more and more. I think I appreciate the original Ghostbusters more every single time I see it.
Yeah, but let's jump forward. Let's jump forward loads of years from happy times to maybe not so happy times. What was the last film that you saw in cinemas that you caught before COVID hit, before a lockdown came in and cinemas had to disappear for a while?
Oh my gosh, My Hero Academia. I think. Do you know that anime series?
Thing is, I heard about this, and I know people were talking about it. It was probably about a week before lockdown hit over here that everybody was talking about My Hero Academia. It did not have a wide release. It wasn't everywhere, but
no.
Yeah,
my son's a big fan of that series, so I took him to go see that movie. And it's very difficult for me to remember. It's very hard for me to remember what I saw before that. But that was definitely the last movie I saw before COVID. It was literally like the next couple days, I think, is when we got put on like a shelter-in-place order here in New York. But I was trying to think about even a better movie, though, that I had seen. It was a good movie. Don't get me wrong. It was a good movie. But
you see,
one that people would have other people have seen. I'm trying to think of what's
no. It's because this is the thing about it. It's luck of the draw, and it's the fact that because
I know what it is.
Oh yeah,
I know what it is. Okay, so to answer your question, last movie I saw was the My Hero Academia movie.
Yes,
the last one that just came out.
Yes,
but the movie I'd seen prior to that I saw many times in the theater actually was The Joker. So you can pick which one you want to go into, but those are my two.
Okay, because My Hero Academia has My Hero Academia. Is it Academia or Academica?
Mia, M-I-A.
Okay, so My Hero Academia. So because that actually has the proper place. So was that any good? Did you enjoy it? Was it just something for your son, or was it like something that you actually enjoyed as well?
I enjoyed it as well, but I almost feel silly talking about it on like a proper movie, podcast about this anime film that was dubbed in English that we watched. That's definitely targeted to probably teenagers.
Okay, if I'm going to, let me try and make you feel better, because I wasn't saying that one of the things we love about this is that it's the luck of the draw, and it's not as if we didn't get a chance to sort of figure out like, oh, lockdown's about to happen, or for you guys, shelter in place is about to happen.
Exactly.
So let me make sure that the last film I see, maybe the last film I see in 2020, let's make sure it's a good one. Let me make sure I go see Parasite or something like that. And it's because my final film that I got to see was Fantasy Island, which was the Blumhouse film.
Oh man, yeah, the Blumhouse one.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was rubbish.
We have considered streaming it from home, buying it video on demand on home several times, and have skipped over it many times. But
don't waste your money.
It looks real. It looks very shiny. It looks very 4K and pretty and saturated.
Yes. Yes. It is all those things, and then you will realize that they used all that 4K and wasted it, because there are leaps of logic that will leave you. I mean, nowadays my hair is receding anyway, but will leave you tearing whatever hair you have left out.
Yeah.
You're like,
and I hate that.
That doesn't make any. How would? No.
Yeah, no. Now, I love a good horror movie. I love them. I can name you my favorites, but going back to your original question, My Hero Academia, if I were to leave listeners with anything from this, my experience seeing that movie was that the animation, in my opinion, was gorgeous, especially the last maybe 15 minutes of the movie where there's like this, the climax, this big battle starts to happen.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. Oh my gosh. It was beautiful animation. The action was stunning. So well done. When it comes out for home video, I'm going to buy it.
Oh,
just
nice.
Simply because the animation was so good. So I really liked it. And the story was great too. It was a very solid. If you're a fan of that franchise and that anime series, then it's an essential movie. I think it's the best movie so far.
Oh, good Lord, they have more? They have more than...
Yeah, they have I think 2 other movies, or at least one. I know they have at least one other movie.
This is totally passed me by.
Yeah, so I saw the other movie.
So do you have to know what's going on in the show before you can actually to follow this?
You will appreciate it 1,000,000 times more if you know what's going on. The primary character, Midoriya, Deku, is his nickname. His journey and where he's at and his development and all that is such a big piece of it.
Yeah.
That you could jump into the movie and just enjoy it for what it is, like the superhero action movie. But if you go through that story, that evolution of that character, his development, you'll come into it with a lot more appreciation.
Okay, now we're getting into something with anime that worries me a bit. It's a bit like, for instance, there's a TV show called Bleach that I refuse.
Yeah, I love it. I watched Bleach, all of it.
I refuse to watch Bleach because there's way too many episodes, and
400 episodes or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And I think it might have ended now, but I remember thinking a couple of years ago, there is no end. They're going to keep making this thing. I want to watch something that I know has an end, and I don't.
No, I agree with you. It should have ended. It should have ended after that. Was it the Ankar arc? I don't know, but where the main character, what's his name? Ichigo Kurosaki, when he loses his powers, that should be the end of the series right there.
Yeah, I just know I want to know something that has an end. And we were talking earlier about how sometimes in America, and you know it from being on the inside when it comes to an American TV show, that as long as people are watching, they will not end it. They will keep going and keep going and keep going until there's a phrase in England, flogging a dead horse. That they'll get to the point where the horse is totally dead, and then they'll be okay, fine, we can stop now.
Yeah, I think that's I think there's a comparison there between anime and Western kind of comic book superheroes, because Batman stories are never going to end, right? We're going to keep getting Batman stories forever, and I think some of these characters, to me at least, feel like Batman. They're Ichigo is essentially a superhero in a lot of ways, and you just want to hear more Ichigo stories, more superhero stories about him fighting demons.
Yes.
Which just seems like 90% of anime is people fighting demons, but yes.
Yeah. So the question I was actually going to ask was going to be that is My Hero Academia like that? Is it never ending?
Well, he tells you at the beginning of the series when you're watching the intro that this is the story how I became the world's greatest superhero. He says this is the story how I became the #1 superhero. So in my mind, that has to be the end of the story, right? Whenever the point is where he is established as the world's greatest, then that's the end of the story, because he's already said this to us in the beginning. This is what the story is about. It's about my journey to becoming the greatest superhero.
They're going to come up with something. It's going to be like Dragon Ball. They're going to come up with something where they're going to be like, yes, I am the greatest superhero. Oh, guess, I only thought I was the greatest superhero. There is someone who is greater. I must train again for another 7 years to become...
I hope not. I hope not. You're right. Things do need to end. It's sad when they do. I hate some of my favorite series when they end. It makes you so sad. But at the same time, it has to happen, or...
What's the point?
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't stay. I think the fact that it ends helps it be special, right?
Yes.
A series like that I love to death, like The Office, it had to end. And if it didn't end, if it was still going on today, would it still be special to people? I don't think so. I don't think it would.
As you said, everything has to end. We should probably come to an end at some point with this. So, why do you love going to the cinema? Why cinema? Why do you think it's a thing?
You absolutely cannot have the cinematic experience at home. You just can't, unless you have a home theater that is gigantic with a massive screen and a Dolby sound system that is, at the quality of what's in some of our better theaters. You just don't, the impact of that story is not the same. I'll give you an example. I saw Mad Max Fury Road in 3D at the Chinese Theater.
Grauman's Chinese Theater, yeah.
Grauman's, which now is TCL, I think, Chinese Theater.
Okay, cool.
And it was just mind-blowing in that environment. That movie, with its action, with the sound design that's in that movie, in 3D, in that amazing theater, I mean, had people cheering and clapping at the end of sequences, right? Like just roaring, like claps, applause,
Yeah.
At the end of these like big action sequences, like the tornado and some of the things with the pole boys, the guys who were like swinging on the poles and all that stuff. And you at home, you could watch it, you could be like, oh, that's cool. You're not going to get that same energy of the crowd and of like even the presentation that movie was shot for, at home. There's other movies that I feel were that way as well, like Force Awakens. I've seen Force Awakens at home. I saw Force Awakens also at the Chinese Theater. It was incredible on that massive screen, It was incredible seeing it that way. The Joker, did I see, was it in IMAX? They released that in I can't remember, but I saw the Joker here in New York. Every time I saw it was here in New York in different theaters. And the cinematography in that movie, I think you just have a better appreciation for it when it's on a massive screen. Mm-hmm. And it's just an immersive experience in a pitch black room where, the actual art that the cinematographer is trying to present to you can be fully realized. You don't get it at its fullness when you're watching it at home. I don't care how good your TV is. You're not gonna be able to have. It's not gonna impact you the same way. Just the same way as listening to an album versus like maybe being, front row live at the concert. You know, your brain just connects to the collective energy of the audience, but also the decibel level of the sound, and the brightness of the screen, in contrast to the blackness of the box that you're in when you're watching it. All of those things, I think matter. And if we still go to the movies, movies are art, but they're also, entertainment. They don't contradict each other. Those things work hand in hand.
Yeah.
But if you really want to appreciate the art that's happening in some of these films, right, from at least a visual and sound engineering, sound design perspective, I think you have to go to the theater for it.
That is pretty comprehensive. It's cool, good stuff. Okay, now we go into a final cinema question. So, what are you most looking forward to seeing in cinemas when they finally reopen?
Tenet.
Straight out of the gate. That's it.
Out of the gate, that's my number one. I think it's so there's a couple movies coming up. Tenet's coming up, right? At some point they'll release that. Wonder Woman 1980, whatever the rest of that title is.
Yeah,
1984. Wonder Woman 1984 is coming. Black Widow movie's coming, and Maverick is coming. So those are the ones that are like on my radar.
Yeah.
Top Gun Maverick. So the two that I want to see the most are Tenet and Top Gun Maverick. Like those are my two that I really want to go see in the theater. I think Tenet is going to be really good. I mean, I feel like Christopher Nolan really delivers. I can't think of a bad movie he's ever made. In my opinion, I can't think of a bad movie he's ever made. They've all been either good or excellent. I feel like he's a safe bet. And then Top Gun Maverick, I love Top Gun. One of my favorite movies, probably my top 15 favorite movies. Top Gun is in that top 15 somewhere.
Yeah.
And I love that character, Pete Mitchell, Maverick. Cannot wait to see that movie. But Tenet, I'm super into getting there for Tenet.
Oh, all right.
What about you though? I'd love to hear from you though. What are the movies that you want to see right away when theaters open?
Well, I think, what am I looking forward to seeing? I mean, Tenet, I think Christopher Nolan, I always think the stuff he does, I mean, from a technical point of view, yes, it's excellent. I think it's at least what he does is interesting. Like, for instance, The Dark Knight Rises, I don't think it's the best film of the Batman trilogy that he did, but I think it's
not at all.
But I think it's interesting. I think that there's some very, very interesting ideas, and what he tries to do in a superhero movie, I think it's really it's kind of like it's the kind of thing that I'll sit down and rub my chin a lot. So I'll be like, oh yeah, I see what he's doing there. Might not be enjoying it in a traditional sense, but yeah, that's quite interesting. But I think I hate to be a cliche, but honestly, I just want to see what Marvel are going to do next. I want to see how Marvel follow on from what they've done over the last 10 years, which I think is amazing. I think has never been done in the history of cinema and might never be done again. I'm just so interested to see how those guys follow it up. As much as that might make me a cliche. And
no, I agree. That's exciting. And they have some things in their back pocket that they can use to really like spike interest if they choose to. So
yeah. And because I know that over the last 10 years, every time Marvel released a film, you know how it is in the comics, that in the comics things go big and they go crazy, and it becomes just so unwieldy that the only thing they can do is burn it down to the ground and start again. And and every time they released a Marvel movie, I remember just going in there going, oh, this might be the point. This might be the point where it all gets messed up. This might be the point where it becomes so big and it begins to eat itself. And I would walk out of the film going, oh my God, they didn't mess it up. It doesn't start eating itself. No. Oh my, I can't believe that. I can't believe they're sustaining this. And so by the time we got to Endgame, I was like, I don't even care if Endgame's rubbish. These guys have earned the right to do some nonsense. Because what they have done over the last 10 years, I remember even using the term, they're looking after my childhood.
They are. They did a great job. It was unreal.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
He's a legend. He's a living legend now.
Yeah, no, I honestly say, I remember walking out of Endgame and just going, I think eventually they're going to study this guy the same way people study Steve Jobs. The way people talk about Steve Jobs, they're going to talk about, because what he has managed to pull together is crazy. It's amazing. Crazy. And yes, he is pretty good stuff. But now, I'm looking at the clock, and I am aware that I've kept you on here for an hour and a half. So...
Good time. Good catch up, Tosin.
It's great. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you so much for answering some of those questions, in amongst other things. And thank you for all the backstage stuff as to what actually happens at the Oscars. This is. I think this is going to have to be its own special, its own Jejuan Guillory special episode.
I'll come back anytime to clean any of that up, because I know you can have your work cut out for you, having to like edit this to something that makes sense. So,
no, don't worry. If you listen to any other episodes of the podcast, you realize that we're not that big on things that make sense. So,
okay.
All right, cool, man. Thanks so much. I'll chat to you later.
Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
And thank you once more, Jejuan, for being the victim. I keep wanting to say victim on Netflix.
The victim. Yeah, you can't call them victims, Toes. It's not fair, is it? No one will want to come on.
Nobody else will want to come on. But if you would like to come on, if you want to be a film buff and you want to come on, I mean, almost every time we do one of these interviews, people always say, "Oh, I don't know if I can say anything." But trust me, you can keep talking, and I will have to edit that. I'll have to edit it down to something so that our podcast doesn't end up being 3 hours. What did you guys think of Jejuan? Anything that he said that piqued interest with you?
I guess I would assume he's probably the same age as you, is he? If you went places and that, I should think so.
Around about the same age, yeah.
I was going to say, because I mean, it's funny that you can tell an era really, because I mean, like some of the films that are mentioned, like Ghostbusters and I mean, Empire Strikes Back, all those sort of movies, you know, and so yeah, but I mean, it sounds really, really knowledgeable and really well read, I think. So really knows his stuff. I don't know, Sharon. What did you think?
It's interesting how I don't know if you would say how influential it was, but how frequently he does reference Star Wars. Yes. And I know it seems to be that from obviously that Star Wars, the first film, later called A New Hope, but it was just a Star Wars when I went to see it. It was one of the first films I saw at the cinema. And I know that for people, it did have an impact, and it has sort of, that impact has resonated. It maybe have diminished slightly as the series has gone on, where
Yes, definitely.
the later films have maybe not had quite such an impact on this youngest generation. But I think for people who caught the original trilogy and then the beginning of the second trilogy, if you'd like to break it down that way, I think it did shape a lot of people's filmmaking appreciation from like a really early age.
Yeah.
I think in a way that I don't think many other films have. I don't know if you could say children of today, the first time they see like a Marvel film at the cinema, how that would have such an impact. But I think Star Wars, we've certainly seen it's been referenced so many times through our interviews.
Yeah,
that
yes.
It has this impact on people who saw it for the first time and went, whoa, what's that I'm watching? And Jejuan was saying he was, 2 or 3 when he saw it at the cinema?
Yes, he was, yeah.
When I was 7 when I saw Star Wars at the cinema, 7 or 8, thereabouts. So that was quite young.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, I don't think I'd remember anything from when I was 2 or 3.
Yeah, I know.
It must have had an impact on him.
I was quite shocked about that because he saw Return of the Jedi, and I love the story that he tells about seeing Empire Strikes Back at his aunt's boyfriend's house.
Yes, you got the wrong color lightsaber. The lightsaber's the wrong color.
He was like, "There's something wrong with your TV. The lightsaber's the wrong color." I absolutely love that. Absolutely love that.
That's the thing that children they do know about. They're like, and if they draw a picture, they get the lightsaber the right color.
Yeah,
it's just one of the things that, especially little boys, they're like, no, you got to have this color for Darth Vader and this color for Luke. It's got to be. There's no messing with it.
I guess
I was interested, how often it came back to Star Wars. I was like, okay, that has an impact.
Yeah, after I try and get away from Star Wars, we keep ending up back there.
You come back there.
So yeah, I mean, other things that we spoke about that we didn't have time for is like, him going to the Oscars, what he'd seen at the Oscars, the 3 times he'd been to the Oscars, and also he got to go to the Governor's Ball. He is part of the Producers Guild of America, so we spoke a little about like screeners that he gets and all that. There was more Star Wars chat. There was comparison of the UK and the US office, what works on the big screen versus what works on the small screen, his work history in America, going all the way from working on The Bachelor to working on Friday Night Lights, which is like an American football TV show. Shaun, did you ever see Friday Night Lights, Shaun?
I saw a couple of episodes. I never saw the whole thing, but I know that was. Oh, so what? He's in that?
No, he's not in it. He worked on it. I think that was his first job because that was filmed in Texas, and he's originally from Texas. And so I think his first job was that he started working on Friday Night Lights, and he ended up going to LA and working on The Bachelor and all that. There's a bit where we talk about the Fast and the Furious, so Shaun, you might want to skip that bit when we release the full interview.
Yeah.
you want to skip that bit. And we have
I'm just a grumpy old man, and I'm grumpy old man.
Well, look, we're talking about where we grow up. Certain things affect us certain ways. There's some things that I'm pretty grumpy about myself, and it's like when I was talking about. I think I go a bit grumpy on the thing when I was talking about TV shows that never end.
Yeah.
And that will bring the grumpy old man out of me. Where I'll be like, where is the end of this thing? Why has it been on TV for 20 years? There is no end. How can you not get to an end in 20 years? God, that will extract the grumpy old man out of me when I'm talking about that kind of stuff. And we have a bit of philosophical discussion as to whether YouTube stars, because we're talking all about the way film is going and how now it's just going to want things that are just going to bring people into the cinema, and things like the rom-com, as we've mentioned, and are not going to be in the cinema anymore. And we talk about if it's all about getting people into the cinema, will YouTube stars ever sell movie tickets? Like, because someone has a big following on social media, will that ever translate into film? So there's a huge, long-ranging discussion that I have with Jejuan, which, if you want to, I find it absolutely fascinating. I know that not everybody will, but I find it absolutely fascinating. We will make available as a special interview show. So you can just listen to the 1.5 hours of us just talking about stuff.
That's cool.
Okay, cool. So I think that
I was interested though, for the first time, there's just one thing I was going to mention, because in his films he's looking forward to, we had one that was mentioned for the first time, Top Gun Maverick. That's the first time that has appeared on the I'm looking forward to this movie.
Thanks.
So I know it's really, I think if you're of an age, that when Top Gun was like, yeah, let's fly planes and shoot things, then I think Top Gun Maverick will probably spark something in you.
Yes.
But this is the first. I was interested though that it's the first time that it's been mentioned in our. This is what I'm looking forward to.
Yes. I agree with you on that. I agree, because Top Gun is another one of those films that I think might be overrated.
I agree with you on that one, Toes. I agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
We agree. We agree together, yeah.
Yeah, I think Top Gun might be overrated. As a film, anyway. As a moment in popular culture, maybe not. But as a film, I think it might be overrated. So, please... Well, send your harshly worded tweets to @NetflixVSCinema or to find us on Facebook to tell us exactly how we do not know what we're talking about. And all I hope is that it's a lot less personal than Shaun and Mai's Da Five Bloods talk. So yes. As I said, if you want to be on this, if you want to be a next film buff and you want to talk about it, I think we've actually come to the end of all of the interviews that I have already recorded. So if you want to be a next film buff, please do get in touch at Netflix via Cinema on Twitter or Netflix via Cinema on Facebook, and just say, oh, yep, this is what it is. These are the 4 questions. This is what I'd like to talk about. And we will see if we can get you on the show. All right, that is it. Until next week, in which I shall be attempting to watch only things that Shaun and I can agree on. It's a goodbye from me.
It's a goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye from me.
All right. See you guys. Bye.